I paid $600 for this ROG Flow laptop. The seller said that they had to send it in for repair because the charging wasn't working. Soon after they got it back, the screen stopped turning on. So I told them I'd buy it and make a video out of it. The seller did send it in the retail packaging, which is always nice. Let's take a look and see what we've got. That is a pretty fancy looking laptop. Okay. Okay, cool. I think the first thing I want to do is plug it in and see if it charges, and then see if we can get the screen to turn on. Okay, here we go. We do get a charging light, so it is charging. Let's see what happens when we press the power button. The keyboard is turning on, but yeah, absolutely nothing on the screen. Now, I have already tried all the common fixes, like making sure the brightness isn't turned down all the way and doing a hard reset on the laptop where you hold the power button for 90 seconds or however many seconds it was, and none of that seemed to work. So I think at this point, I'm ready to take it apart. Now, I've never tried to open one of these up before. In fact, this is the first time I've even seen one of these. And I do not have that great of a track record with fixing laptops, so this one could be interesting. Hopefully this thing just comes apart. I'm not even sure if this really comes apart. I mean, I would think it does, but also there's no screws or anything up here, so I'm not sure what that's about. Is that like a cover that pops off? Doesn't feel like it. Oh wow, look at that. I didn't know this thing came all the way up like that. Okay, that's cool. Guessing I need to remove that, but also let's remove this. Maybe there's a screw under here we need to remove or something. Ah. And there is not. But we will need to have this out to remove this cover, assuming the cover comes off. Okay, the hinge. Do we need to remove the hinge? I feel like we need to remove this back cover probably, so I am going to do that now. At some point, I feel like we're going to have to remove it, so let's just get that over with. Okay. Whoa, that doesn't just come right off. It's got a little like hook right there. That's cool. Oh, and it still doesn't. There's another like piece of adhesive right there. I don't really want to take that off, but I think I'm gonna have to. After I remove the keyboard, I see there's 2 screws down here. So let's get those off. Okay, and now there's a little bit of a gap right here. I wonder, let's try a suction cup right here. Oh yeah, there we go, look at that. That's coming apart. And we're just going to go right along the edge. There we go. Got some clips in there, it feels like. Okay, so, and now we have the display off. Where's the cable? There's the cable. That's one thing I wanted to check, is the display cable. So we'll be able to check that. I'm going to remove it from the board, I think, first, and then we'll check it out. It also means I didn't need to remove these from the hinge, so I'm going to put those on so we can fold this back down. And now with this flipped around, I can look at this ribbon cable. I mean, it looks like it's in there just fine. Okay, now we can remove the screen and have a look at it and look at the rest of the board. And looking at these ribbon cables, I don't see any problems with the cables themselves. That would have been cool if that's all the problem was, but as far as I can tell, these are in fine condition. I don't see any problems with them. So next, let's remove this battery so we can have a better look at the whole board. And also, I don't want to be doing too much crazy stuff with this battery plugged in. So this connector wasn't pushed in. I don't think that really matters because The battery seemed to be working fine. It was turning on and charging, so I don't think that was too much of an issue, but it was left unlocked, so I don't know, maybe it was an issue. We'll be sure to plug that in correctly when we put it together. Okay, and the battery comes out like that. There wasn't any cables on this connector. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be. I'm not even sure what that's for. And with the battery out, we can have a little closer look at the board. So let's see if we can find any evidence of any work that they've done on it. And I don't see anything too crazy. This screw right here looks like somebody almost stripped it out. And it looks like maybe there's some flux residue over here. I can't tell for sure. There's definitely something over here on this chip. But this tells me that they likely did have to remove this board. So I think the next thing we need to do is remove this cooling system so we can get down to the board. And then we can look at the other side and see if there's anything done to the other side. I think we have all the screws loose. Sure doesn't feel like it though. Fans are loose. This is going to be stuck down because it does have the thermal paste on it, but it feels a little too stuck down. There we go. Okay. There we go. Oh, and we got some liquid metal over here. We got thermal paste over here. That liquid metal actually wasn't making very good contact on this heatsink part. I feel like we might need to do some work there to make sure this thing's gonna cool properly. But that's for later. We gotta see if we can get this thing working first. Also, it looks like whoever took this apart before mashed up part of the heatsink fins right here. So that definitely tells me that somebody's probably been into this thing. There's a lot of stuff that has to come off over here in order to get this part out. All of this stuff is resting or installed on top of the board, so you gotta remove it first. Okay, I'm just gonna set that aside because that is connected. This, it looks like must be for speakers. Okay, and then we have to remove this entire hinge assembly over here, it looks like, because it's mounted right on top of this board. Okay, and then the hinge assembly comes out, and then I think we're ready to remove the board. But we are going to use the right size bit so we don't strip these screws out, unlike whoever opened this before us. Luckily, they're not stripped so much that we can't get it out. The bit does fit in there just fine still, so not too big of a deal. Okay, we've got several cables under here, so we have to be careful there. But I think the rest of this is about ready to come up. I want to make sure that we don't do any damage to those cables though. A little worried about that. Oh, this cable just came off. I don't know if that would have anything to do with the problem we're having. Whew. Okay, now we can flip this around and remove that cable. There we go. So this is the keyboard connector, it looks like is what connects here. So the keyboard did seem to be working, so that must have been connected okay in here. Yeah, it looks like it just pulled out of the connector, so I don't see any damage on the cable, so I think that's probably fine. All right, now we got the board out. Let's inspect it a little closer and see if we can figure out what this other repair shop did and if we can fix it. And right away, I can see some flux residue right over here, all around this chip right here, and then a bunch over around this chip as well. Let's get under a microscope and inspect those and see if they look good or if maybe there's a problem there. So looking at the board under the scope, you can see that they replaced this chip most likely. And this is where a bunch of the extra flux kind of drifted off to. There's some flux still around the chip. And the chip is a little bit crooked. It looks like it's on here just fine. This is like the battery charger controller basically. And it looks like it's mostly fine, but I kind of feel like I want to reflow this, basically heat it up until the solder melts and then let it solidify and cool again. I think I might try that because other than that, there's only one other chip that it looks like they did anything with, and that's this. I think that's the BIOS chip right there. And that is also soldered on just fine. I don't see any problems there. I'm not sure why they would have messed with that, honestly. But they did mess with it. I'm not sure what they did. Maybe they unsoldered it to do some sort of programming on it. Hopefully not. If that's the case, we might not have any luck on this board. Other than that, I don't see anywhere else that they've done anything on it. Everywhere else I look on the board seems to be totally normal. No evidence of any work done. That is with the exception of this area and this little chip right here. I'm not totally sure whether they messed with this chip and that's why there's all this flux around here, or whether that just flowed in from the other side of the board. I don't know. We might need to reflow this chip too, but I don't really want to do that as much because this is a BGA chip, which means it has solder balls underneath it. So I think the first thing I want to do is reflow this battery charger controller on the back side of the board. And then after that's done, let's put it back together enough to test. That probably won't do anything, but I want to start with that just in case it does work. Also, putting it back together enough to test, we'll also test to make sure that all the ribbon cables that they had disconnected were reconnected properly. So let's get this reflowed and then we'll put it back together just enough to test it and see if that happens to fix it. I'm going to put a little bit of flux on this. That will just help all this solder flow nicely. Then I'll heat it up with my hot air soldering station until the solder melts, and then I'll just let it cool down again. So we got that ribbon cable. This one is so difficult to get in here. I actually had to remove it from the board with all the adhesive and whatever. Okay, so that one's in there right now. Okay, now I need to make sure we can fit this board in here how it's supposed to go without unseating any of those, either of those. I hope I can do that. This has to fit down in the slot right here, all while not messing with those ribbon cables. That's actually very difficult to do, at least so far. That ribbon cable just came out. Oh, but I think, okay, we got it. Okay, now I can recheck these and make sure they're still in there how they should be. That one is. This one I just need to put back in there. Come on. Oh, I think I got it. There we go. Okay, I think we got it. Okay, and now I can reseat these cables back down in here. There we go. Got it. Okay, that cable feels good. That cable feels good. Those are all in. Okay, I think we finally have this installed. That was a little difficult getting everything in there how it should be, but I think we succeeded. And by we, I mean I. It's not like you guys are doing anything, just sitting there watching. Now I need to get the screws in here just enough to hold this in. Then I am going to put the heatsink back over this and then hook the screen up and see if it's going to work. And now the cooling system can go in. Now if this actually works, I'll probably remove this and go back and respread that liquid metal. But this is just a test. I don't think this is going to work, so I just want to test this for now. Okay, good so far. Now we need to get the screen in, the battery in, and then we should at least be able to test it. Okay, so here goes one screen connector right here. It is kind of finicky to get in there correctly, so we can always hope that that's all it was, just a screen ribbon cable, but really don't think it is. Other one goes right here. So far, I've got to say this repair shop didn't do like too bad of a job. I mean, there are a couple screws that are kind of almost stripped. They're still usable, but I mean, they definitely could have been a little more careful there. But other than that, it's really not too bad. Okay, let's set that up there and get the battery in. Some of these laptops I get in that repair shops have tried to fix are just a mess. And this one, it looks like they, I mean, at least sort of mostly knew what they were doing. I really hope it's not that BIOS chip though, because if something needs to be done to the BIOS on the chip, I don't know how to do that. Okay, let's get the battery plugged in there and locking it down. There we go. Let's see if we can start it up and see if we get anything on the screen. I'm pretty sure we won't, but it's definitely worth a try. And power button. No signs of power. We might need the keyboard in or something. Oh, there we go. White light over here. And then it turns right off. Oh, blinking again. No idea what that means. Let's put the keyboard back on and see if the keyboard lights up. It does. So we have keyboard lights. It may be doing that because we don't have the SSD installed, but either way, we get nothing on the screen. I'm pretty sure there would be something on the screen by now. So just as I suspected, unfortunately, that reflowing those chips didn't seem to help. It kind of makes me wonder too, that main chip we reflowed was for basically charging management, and it doesn't seem to have any problem with charging, so I kind of wonder if we even have just like a faulty screen or something. Let's plug the charger in and just make sure that it is still charging. Make sure we didn't fix it until it was broken even more. Okay, orange light. I feel good about that. Yeah, we just got nothing on the screen. So I have had it turned on for a few minutes and the fans just turned on, so that's good to know that those work. I'm gonna do some testing on these pins over here and see if it looks like the computer's even trying to turn the screen on. We also do have a light in the back over here, so let's see what happens when we test the voltage for these screens, for the backlight and then the LCD. 0 volts, 3.2, 0, 3.3, 3.3, 3.3, 3.2, 0, 0, 0, 3.3. Okay, so we got a bunch of 3.3 volts over here on this ribbon cable. I think that's probably for the backlight. And I think over here is the voltage for the screen. And we've got 19.5 volts on those 2 pins, 3 pins, and then 0. Okay, so that tells me that I think we have power to the screen, but the screen's not turning on, which makes me feel like maybe the seller of this laptop dropped it, or the screen might have somehow broke and then they sold it to me claiming to not know that. Maybe. I don't know for sure. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can get one of these screens, but let me look up and see if I can find one. If I can, I'll replace it and see if the problem is the screen and not with anything else on the laptop. So far, I feel like it probably is the screen since we are getting voltage to the screen and to the backlight. So after searching online for quite a while, I couldn't find any reliable source of screens for this laptop, and honestly, I'm not convinced it's the screen that's the problem anyway. I feel like there's got to be something else wrong with this, but another problem I'm having is there are no schematics anywhere that I can find for these. I can find the board view software, but no schematics, and a board view without a schematic is really only so good. As I'm looking over this board, I see a number of chips that look like they've been replaced or possibly just reflowed. Now, I did find a replacement for this intercell chip, so I'm just going to replace it just in case that happens to be the problem. I don't think it is, but I'm going to replace it anyway. Okay, we got the board in so far. I'm getting pretty good at putting that cable in too, actually. That's one of the good things about this. So far, I'm so disappointed in this. I thought I'd be able to fix it ridiculously. I'm not sure why I thought that. I have not been doing good with laptops recently, but I still thought I'd be able to do better, but there's just so little information about this out there. It's, I guess, maybe just new enough and maybe not one that's sold a ton of them, so it's just harder to find information out there about them, such as, you know, like I said, the schematic and stuff like that. And without that, there's not really a lot to go on. I went ahead and just reflowed a number of chips, just hoping that that might help. This magnet is so strong it's just pulling the screw right away. There we go. So I was hoping that we'd be able to still, you know, fix it in spite of that, but it is just not. I just don't have a good feeling about this one. The reason they probably were going to charge so much, I think the seller said $900 to fix this, I think, is because they're just going to replace the board probably. Unfortunately, a lot of times that's just what some of these companies just automatically go to. Instead of doing the work to fix the board, they just replace it, when a lot of these are fixable if you have the right information and knowledge. I mean, I'm definitely not, don't consider myself a laptop repair technician. But, you know, if I had a little more information, that would definitely help. But until we get really solid right to repair laws, this kind of stuff is just gonna happen, you know? A laptop that would probably cost not that much to fix now costs a whole lot to fix, because you just have to replace that entire board. I'm actually not going to put all the screws in this because I'm most likely going to be using this for parts for other laptops that I get in. You know, if I keep buying laptops, it's not necessarily the best business move for me since I have not fixed a lot of them. But at the same time, I feel like they do make interesting videos and they make interesting repair attempts, in my opinion. I mean, it's interesting for me to try and fix them, so I hope you guys enjoy it as well. But if this was like, you know, if I was buying them to fix and resell, that would be a bad business move, probably. Except for some, you know, if I got some where there's a lot of repair information out there for them, then I'd have a lot better luck. But unfortunately, not too many, especially newer laptops. There's not too many that have that information out there. The other thing about this one is it did have, you know, that BIOS chip has been removed. So I'm assuming somebody messed with the BIOS on this. And, you know, that I feel like that could also be a problem. And I am not familiar with basically anything having to do with BIOS chips. I probably should get familiar with it, but I have not done that yet. There's always more to learn with repair though. Okay, I think that's all done. I'm going to put the SSD back in, and then we'll hook up the screen and the battery and see if this happens to fix it. I don't have high hopes, but hey, you never know. Okay, and now we'll hook up the screen. It's one connection and the other connection. I did inspect these connectors as well, and they all looked fine even under the microscope, so I don't think it's like a connection issue or anything like that. All right, and now the battery is plugged in, locked. Okay. Let's see what happens when we try to turn it on. Come on. And so far, nothing. I might have fixed this one until it was broken. So we should be able to see the light here. Let's take this off. That's the light right there. And if we press the power button once, and we get nothing. Let's hold it down just because, why not? Yep, it is just dead. So we definitely fixed this laptop until it was broken. Unfortunately, there's just not enough information out there to really give us a real chance at this one. Today, I was less of a fixer and more of an attempter. If you like this shirt though, go to TronicsFix.com. You can check out this shirt and all of our other merchant products. If you like this type of video where I'm trying to fix laptops, I'll put a video up on your screen now where I had a little better outcome. I think you might like this one. Thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you have a good one.